This is Michael Osterlink. Welcome to O Radio, where we explore individual and social transformation through collaborative action. I'm a psychotherapist with a transpersonal and somatic specialization. I'm also a transpartisan social entrepreneur and head instructor at SEALFIT's Unbeatable Mind Academy. Today's show is sponsored by Synergy Float Center, a premier flotation center located in Old Town Alexandria in Virginia. When you take the time to slow down, amazing things can happen. Take care of yourself by booking a float, sauna, or one of the other many services today. You can book online at synergyfloatcenter.com or give them a call at 571-319-0355. And today our guest is Joe Gagnon. Joe is the author of Living the High Performance Life, an extraordinary Joe's Guide to the Extraordinary. He's an entrepreneur, adventurer, and biohacker who's currently the CEO of Performance Tea and CEO of Spark Central. Joe is the founder of the High Performance Life, a philosophy, guide, and set of techniques for mental toughness, creative problem solving, leadership, and personal effectiveness. He's also an avid blogger and passionate endurance athlete, having completed 6 Ironman triathlons, 70 plus marathons, distance races, and in 2017, he ran 6 marathons on 6 continents in 6 consecutive days. Wow, I'm just exhausted just thinking about you doing that, Joe. How you doing?
Oh, very good, Michael. Great to spend some time with you.
It's great to spend some time with you. So you did 6 marathons in 6 consecutive days on 6 different continents. That was in 2017, not too long ago. Tell me your story of what led you to who you were, to the type of person who does that, interested in biohacking, creating a whole really interesting performance tea company, which I've had the benefit of drinking your teas.
Thanks.
Tell me your story.
Yeah, so, I think that it's always hard because I wrote the book and it was hard when I thought about like, what do you want to tell that's interesting? But I think that the way that I always think about it is this sort of this life choice of going from, most of us start off ordinary, most of us are not sort of the child of the ambassador to Kenya and, so we're normal people and we, I think, started with rather humble beginnings. But, as I grew up, I realized that I had this sort of very deep-seated curiosity. Like when I graduated college, I wanted to go study in Australia. When I started working, I became a programmer, even though I wasn't one. And I always just found that curiosity stoked this incredible feeling in me. And I didn't really, it's in looking back, you sort of understand it. But there were the moments, almost like the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey of despair, of being bullied at McDonald's when I was 16, or, having your car stolen when you have no money and having to move back to your parents' house. And I think all of those made me more resilient and to build a deeper resolve. So I actually had a fantastic career. I sort of outworked everyone for the better part of 20 years. And I found myself when I turned 40 in what I characterize as the greatest rut of my life. I was one-dimensional, working 100 hours a week, making that proverbial $1 million a year kind of thing with the big house and the wife and the kids and the BMW. And I felt like there was no purpose. I was like, what am I going to do for the next 50 years? It was just empty, even though it was like everything we worked for. And I had sort of my own breakthrough moment, which said that I need to sort of develop more of who I am. I was good as a father. I was, good as a husband. I was good as a worker, but I wasn't good as me. And so I set out building sort of a roadmap for myself around these 3 ideas that characterize themselves as life, learning, and fitness, and sort of built them into my life just like you brush your teeth. The daily disciplines and habits that create sort of who you are. Now, I didn't need permission to do this, Michael. I just sort of said, why not try? And so then it kept on getting better. I'd set new goals for the next year. Like one year I decided I wanted to hang out with really smart people. So, well, how would you do that? I said, well, why don't I watch 1,000 TED Talks this year? And I did, and I wanted to learn more. So I said, maybe if I read a book a week, I would learn more. And then what if I tried to run 4,000 miles in a year? What would that take? And so it was just always these questions to myself. And what I found through that was that, not only did you not need permission, there's this immense amount of resource that you think aren't there for your taking, but they are, and they're free. And they're just you deciding. And so it sort of just continues to, escalate and escalate until I start this idea of blogging and then writing the book. And then I'm like, okay, how do you end the book? And I've had this curiosity. I've traveled around the world a lot. I've flown over 4 million miles. I've, run 35,000 miles in my life. I've done a lot. And I like, well, how could you combine all that, plus sort of your love for humanity, and then to do something good? So I concocted the idea. We could talk about it a little bit more later, because it's about, sort of this human experience, meeting people, sharing this moment, and taking on what seems to be a really difficult challenge. But with the practice, it was actually not as hard as it should have been. And it was incredibly and immensely rewarding. I raised some money for kids in high school in Guatemala. I met thousands of great and interesting people. And I did this sort of, how could that kid who grew up in the Bronx go do something like this, 40 years later? It just seemed improbable. And then it just happened.
So lots of great things for me to ask questions about. Let me step back. Let's step back and let's go to when you're 40.
Yes.
And you had the BMW and you had the house and you had all the stuff, but there's an emptiness there.
Yeah.
What was like the spark that did lead you to I don't know if it's to regain your curiosity, but the curiosity reemerged in your life and you started exploring all these different things? I mean, was there like a moment that happened? Was there a process? Was there a conversation you had, a book you read? Like, what was the spark inducing thing?
Yeah, there was an interaction. So I was in the firm of Ernst & Young for 10 years. I was a partner for 4 years. And I met this guy, John Connolly, and he was an entrepreneur. He had a similar start to me, like he grew up in South Philly. He was nothing. And he became sort of this self-made entrepreneur. And he was starting this company called Mainspring. And he wanted me to join. And I'm like, what are you, out of your stinking mind? Why would I walk away from all this stuff? And he kept asking me really hard questions that I didn't have answers to. Like, why is that satisfying to you? And like when you say the money, it just feels really uncomfortable. And then he's like, so what are you going to do for the next? Like, how are you going to find fulfillment if you just keep doing the same actions? And I'm like, I don't know. And so he was a sales guy. He was selling me on joining this company that had 7 people and no revenue. I was going to take an 80% pay cut, and I was going to do it with a wife and 2 kids. But it became so compelling when I couldn't answer the questions that I had to go find out. So I write about this idea of personal fulfillment. And I know, Michael, with the work you do, it's hard to tell someone what that means. But when you get on the journey to find it, you can find it, but you have to put yourself on that path. And personal fulfillment is not just a bank account. That's the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy. For fulfillment, to get to self-esteem and up to actualization, we have to go way deeper into ourselves and then into the community. And then it starts to sort of flower. And then it gets like, oh, wow, it's like cascades and it's a snowball and like, oh, boy.
So you had this gentleman, a friend, a colleague, asking some really important questions, which kind of woke you up.
Yep.
And in your exploration of those answers, you create a whole new path for yourself. I'm always interested in people's social ecosystem because, as you know, and in the space of personal development space, if you don't have an ecosystem which supports your growth and development, a partner, family members, friends, it's like climbing up a hill. It's hard enough as it is climbing up the hill in personal growth and development, but you don't have that social support, is even more difficult. What was it like for your family, for you to, be successful in the traditional American way, and then all of a sudden start asking these questions and, having a new path for yourself?
Yeah, I think that, there were 2 things that I always thought about. Was one, I didn't want to ever put the family at risk. So, I saved money and all that kind of stuff. But we always we had this philosophy amongst us about sort of asking permission of each other to sort of, explore what you wanted to explore. Whether that was at one point, Kimberly wanted to go to India on her own to study art and architecture. And, she saved the money to go do that and lived in a hut. Or, me with some of my adventures, or Anthea, exploring. So we were very supportive. We were a cooperative family. We love independence, but we're highly supportive. And when you have support, right, and part of that's by engaging people and being polite and asking. And then the other thing I found was that the better that I got, the better I was as part of the family, that I wasn't on edge. I was much more balanced. I had this introspection about life that actually everyone said, oh, wow, we like that guy better than the other one. And so they would allow it to happen because it was even beneficial to them. And then, there's the collateral effect. When you learn and share, other people benefit. And then they sort of adapt to that curiosity and that wanderlust and this sort of desire to find the same thing. That's why the other part is the community of people you put yourself in. Someone would tell you that, well, you're privileged because of the people you know. And I'd say, absolutely not. The people I know are the people who I invested in, and then they wanted to spend time with me, but I put time into them first. I never asked for anything. I offered, what can I do to help you? How can I do that? And then people will then give you time back. Another one of the big lessons I learned.
See, actually, that's a great thing. Let me ask you some of the lessons, because in your book, your pillars, life, learning, and fitness. And as one of your things about learning is learning to support other people, like as a way to expand your network and your collegial relationships, and you benefit yourself, obviously, but you also assist them in their growth and development with whatever their thing is.
Yeah, and that develops deeper over time. In the beginning, I'm like silly, it might be raking their leaves or shoveling their snow. It's in service to others that you endear yourself. If you invited me to your house for dinner, I would actually want to clean up after dinner and wash the dishes. And I'd leave and, you'd say, oh, that is interesting, but I'm in service to others. That's my life. And so seems to be a secret because many people are sitting back waiting for something. But if you sort of raise your hand and volunteer, step in, you don't even have to be sort of the quote unquote expert. And there's no one who ever says no to help. And so there's some of these, often we'll probably hear, there's privilege. And I don't know if privilege is something given or earned, but in a funny way, you can earn privilege. And what privilege means is just opportunity to do more, not necessarily that you're the only one. And so I found that volunteering and offering to do things that others didn't want to do gave you a significant advantage over others, which then, in this life lesson, which is when you're in service to others, boy, do they give back.
Well, let me say, when I have you over for dinner and you clean, my wife will be very happy because I can make dinner. I suck at cleaning. So that's perfect.
Yes, I'll be happy to do that.
Back to your pillars, life, learning, and fitness. Can you break those down, what they mean for you and why they think they're important for other people to follow?
Yeah, they're just broad categories, and we can put some different topics in them. But, in the life category, right, this is really about sort of both this combination of values and ethics and integrity. They're all the words in the dictionary that cost nothing but give massive return. It's about courage. It's about grit, determination, perseverance, resolve. We can go through and just write these words, and if you act on them, your life changes.
Yeah.
They are enablers of this system. This is, when I finally realized I was a biohacker, it wasn't because I knew what that meant. It was just that I realized that this is a system, that it can be optimized. It's sitting waiting. There was a point, Michael, I ran 10 miles a day for 100 days in a row. And at the 101st day, I said to myself, I wonder what would happen if I didn't run today. Where does all that power and energy go? Right? It's sitting there waiting to be used. So life is about optimizing our system around the core elements of, community, self-love, about, and these other elements that then make you, just productive. Learning. I think that the word about learning for me is curiosity. Like I was sitting on an airplane today and wondering, about what was the distance between the roof of the plane and the top of the plane? I just want to know. And what it does is it sort of changes the dynamic of how the brain works. And the more curious, they say when you're old is when you trade your dreams for regrets. But I think you're old when you stop being curious. You need to be curious to the last day. And that curiosity drives the need for learning. Whether learning is reading a book, the dictionary, Don't just go buy something and say, why, how? And it creates another level of sort of fire in your system. And then fitness, the strong body carries a strong mind. If we're weak physically, and this doesn't mean you have to either run a marathon or lift 100 pounds. It means being, resilient. I travel a lot. I don't get sick. I exercise every day. I've done that. Over the past 10 years, I took off 4 days. And that was just sort of a
slacker.
Yeah, exactly. And so what though I found was that when stress comes on someone who's physically strong, we carry it better. We feel better. It sort of sits with us okay. But when you don't have that strength, you can't step into, because life isn't about perfect, right? I mean, like I said, the hero's journey, there's some hard times, there's some better times, but you better be ready to shoulder that burden. And if that even meant your friend said, can you come over and help me move? You're going to be able to pick up the boxes and walk up the stairs or do something. I have this good privilege of now being able to do activities with my kids. They're 28 and 26. And, 3 weeks ago, we went to the Grand Canyon and did a rim to rim hike. I was the guide with a bunch of 20 somethings.
That's awesome.
And so, but that's because I put myself into that spot. So that combination, when we think about the 3 things everyone does today, they eat, they sleep, they brush their teeth. I think you throw other practices in there, which is exercise or fitness, learning, and then, something good for the person or the planet. Boy, does life get easy when you put those into your life.
So let me ask you about fitness, because I have imagined for fitness, it's a broader category. It's not necessarily physical fitness. It's fit as a whole organism. So what does your fueling look like as an example?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's evolved over time. What I realized was that much of what we do in our nutrition side of our life causes strain in the body, and I'm not going to sort of tell people how to live, but I made some choices. For example, I stopped drinking alcohol 15 years ago because I couldn't push the envelope as hard. Like I didn't want to wake up with a headache and feeling tired. And it took away from my performance. And we're seeing more and more that, it takes alcohol 4 or 5 days to get out of the body. And so you can do it, but infrequently. I changed my diet from a meat-eating diet to a vegetarian diet. And I found that my system responded very well, to plant-based proteins. And I wasn't straining so much. And so I eat and I feel better. It was, a combination of
dairy-free, fish-free.
Yes.
Everything. Okay.
Yeah. And then I moved away 2.5 years ago from caffeine. And I thought that would be impossible, because I was like, it seemed like that was, and I found actually I was less tired when I moved away from caffeine. So what I did, Michael, was pieces through my life. It's been a journey of change, and you make a commitment to one of those changes. And then once that sticks, then you can make another one. We can't do 5 at the same time. It becomes too disruptive. Our system wouldn't even know how to respond. So, if you think about it, I still have at least 30 or 40 years left to live. So that's a long time to set some goals, and if you're 30 or 40 years old, you have plenty of time to make any of these changes, and they stick. And then you find your performance level goes up. So I feel better than when I was 25 or 35. I'm faster, stronger, healthier, more resilient. I thought it was supposed to go the other way. I'm going up and not down.
Well, good for you. That's awesome. What are some of your other tricks of the trade? Like you call yourself a biohacker. What are some of the daily or weekly biohacks you do to optimize your health and well-being?
Yeah, I did. I moved, to just connect to the performance T piece of this. There's some herbs that are called adaptogens that are just amazing, healing and stress adaptive parts of the plant ecosystem that help our body readjust. We're still overreacting to some of our primitive systems, like the production of cortisol and other, sympathetic system responses. And we have to find a better way to balance out of our lives. If cortisol's high, we're stressed, our body is fighting. So if you can get back to balance, you can get closer to your 100%. So I added those supplements in RT format, and then CBD, another healing plant to help when you start to push. There's a way to recover naturally. And I took a lot of, the over the counter, I like to write about life doesn't come in a pill, and it's not the way to solve problems. And so, a lot of natural stuff, like fire cider is a great natural farmer oriented additive to your life. It has, garlic and pepper and cider vinegar. These things help adjust our gut. And we start thinking about what we're eating. It doesn't mean you can't eat ice cream or have a chocolate bar or do something that you might want to do. But there's 21 meals in the week, 17 of them you should be eating well, and so set out that as the goal. And then, one of the disciplines that I put in place when I was trying to make some of these changes was, don't let someone tell you how to eat or how much to eat or what to do. You have to be in control, have agency over yourself. And then these systems work because they're usually envious of what you're doing. They want to sort of drag you down. So don't let that happen.
How do you balance? Now, balance is not the right word. And you might have just answered it in terms of like self-experimentation, but there's a lot of information out there just in terms of diet, nutrition, fueling, supplementation, et cetera, and it is all over the board. I mean, I could read one day to take X and the next day not to take X and blah, 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 blah. How do you get through the noise to figure out what you might want to experiment with? And then how do you experiment with it to know that it's actually working for you and there's not other variables that might be at play?
No, that is a really great question because, you can't do a double blind study on yourself. So you don't know what would have happened if I didn't do this. Yeah. First, I start with, back to my curiosity and research. I love reading. So I start there and I try to not just look at the people who like something, but hear why they don't. So you can then create your own conclusion. Then the second thing is I look for very high quality people who care about quality and what they produce. And then I try it. I, do it slowly and see if I find an effect. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to do that. And then I think that, to holistically change how the body reacts takes time. Like, for example, if you gained 50 pounds, it probably took 10 years to do that. Well, if you wanted to lose 50 pounds, why would you think you'd do that in a year? You have to put some patience into the way that you think about how the adaptive parts of the body are going to respond to these changes. And so, and then, what I do is try to objectively compare. So I track what I do every day. I look back on my historical performance. And so I have a reference point for both how I feel as well as then, what I do. And then I do have some data that helps, right now I have a Garmin watch on this arm. I have this Whoop strap on this arm. Okay. So I'm trying to capture data that's telling me about my performance, whether it be heart rate or activity level. And all of those are indicative of improvement. And so it's like patience might be the other big factor in this, right? That really matters to, can you make a change that sticks and has value at the end of it?
Nice. In terms of biohacking and tracking things, do you ever do blood tests as well?
Yeah, I have. And I've done the VO2 max tests to check out, how well I'm doing from a oxygen carrying capacity. I've looked at, everything from your blood markers in alkaline and seeing how my system is responding. I've done, some of these programs where over a period of time, like 10 days, I've done it where, you take body temperature, urine and blood every day and see what happens based on different behaviors. And so what I found is that, what my instincts are telling me and the way I feel is matching to the data. And so that tells me that I don't always have to do those tests, but there's some baselining that helps. Like if you and I were out exercising, I could tell you probably within 3 heartbeats what my heart rate is at.
Wow. Good.
Because I have that level of sensitivity after all these years of doing this. And then I keep on just every once in a while I look, I'm like, yep, that's what it was. But it's time and awareness that happens, and so, people will say, oh, well, I have a bad knee or I have this or that, or I can't do. let's not make an excuse. Let's find out what we can do with our constraints.
Yep.
And optimize for ourselves. That's the most important part of this. This isn't about Michael versus Joe. This is about Michael against Michael, right? This is him being a better version of himself, or me, the same thing. And we all can do that.
Right on. You mentioned adaptogens, and that they are part of Performance Tea.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about Performance Tea, which, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I've had the opportunity to use, thanks to our mutual friend Anka.
Yes, she's a connector. I tell the story, sort of quickly, which was, there was this guy named Paolo. He isn't still named Paolo. He's I call him the instigator. He was going through his own life change, and he jumped into CrossFit and was not finding performance. And he's like, I need a natural way to improve. I can't drink that stuff that you can't talk about. Who knows? So he starts working in his lab. Then he meets this guy, Marco, who is a formulator. And for 25 years, he's been working on formulating herbal remedies for entrepreneurs, athletes, executives, high performers in Boulder. And the two of them came up with this idea of Performance Tea. And then Anka introduced me. So the coordinator introduced then me, I call the validator. And then I took the supplement called Energy, and I used it to run around the world. And it worked. And I was like, oh, wow. This was one of the elements that actually made me recover better each day and feel better. And so we had, instigator, the formulator, coordinator, and the validator come together that just sort of legitimized the whole idea. And then as sort of a commercial kind of guy, I'm like, the loose leaf is great, but we need convenience if we want to get into people's lives. So we turned it into an extract powder, so you can just dissolve it into hot or cold water. You can put it in a smoothie, make a latte, add it to your oatmeal, whatever you want. The versatility is there. And then we had these non-CBD versions called Energy, Balance, and Focus. They really are fit for purpose, so their names belie what they do. And then we explored a year and a half ago adding organic CBD, and we created Snooze and Revive and Recovery. And now we have this sort of, nice portfolio of natural herbal drinks called teas that help you depending on what you need for the day. If you want to write an article or a blog post, drink Focus. If you're out doing some hard work for a day, Energy is fantastic. And then Recovery is great. And Revive is an awesome alternative to coffee if you're trying to get off caffeine. And of course, we have 40% of Americans who can't sleep. And so Snooze is, we take the calming herbs of passion flower and chamomile and add CBD, and all of a sudden you're getting more REM sleep and feeling better in the morning. So so the journey's been amazing, and building a company is hard, but we're having fun doing it.
Nice. And this conversation is actually a cognitive enhancer for me, because now I remember I need to also thank Paolo, because he's the one who originally introduced me to the tea and gave me some samples. So I know him through the Unbeatable Mind and Seal Fit.
Yeah. He's a convert for sure.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So obviously you do the Performance Tea.
Yep.
You also have the book. How can people find the book?
Yeah, so we sell the book on Amazon. So Living the High Performance Life is on Amazon. It's I call it sort of a life handbook. So it's a nice story, and then in it I put in some worksheets and exercises for people, so they can sort of engage on their own level with it. It's not a book you have to read cover to cover. You can read chapters and get the stories and then the learnings, and then I gave back to people something they can do with it themselves. So it was fun project to work on for sure.
And so that's on Amazon. Where can people find more about Performance Tea?
Yeah, so we actually sell the Adaptogen products on Amazon and also on our website. So www.performancetea.com. And we sell our CBD products and our adaptogen products. We're getting into retail now, so we're in about 40 stores, but not national, but Cleveland, the Midwest, some in Colorado, some in California. So our mission is to, the mission of the company is to help people achieve their potential. Nice. And this product is part of that. And so we're committed because we think this helps people. And so that's why we want to, get off and get people drinking it.
Nice. So they can find the tea on Amazon or on your website itself. Yeah. Find your book on Amazon. Are there other ways of getting more information about what you do and your experiments and your curiosity and your travels
Yeah,
and your adventures?
I'm, I'm like, I love email. So if someone emails me at joe@performancet.com, I will absolutely respond back.
Nice.
We've done coaching. If you want to run a 5K all the way up to an ultra marathon, I'll help you build a plan. We're all about helping and supporting, just like I had it. On Instagram, you can follow the High Performance Life, or you can follow us on performance_t.com and start to get into the community. I'm on Facebook, of course, at the High Performance Life, and the blog that I write, which is now, 2,500 plus days in a row I've written the blog. It's on thehighperformancelife.net. And if you sign up, you'll get a daily email from me, which is sort of a paragraph about that life element and the learning element of how I think every day. And it's a great challenge for me to write every day and share that.
One more time for that particular website.
Yeah, so that's thehighperformancelife.net. And then sign up for the blog if you give me your email address. I don't share it with anyone else. This is just between whoever wants to subscribe and me. We're going to keep writing for a long, long time. There's lots to talk about.
So let me encourage folks who are either watching or listening to this to definitely check out and try your teas for various different reasons, which is awesome. Check out your book, which is on Amazon, and then sign up for your newsletter at thehighperformancelife.net, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Joe, great to talk to you. Great to see you.
Yes, it's been wonderful. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate your time. And anytime you need me to come over for dinner, just let me know.
I'll definitely let you know. Good to see you, Joe. Take care.
All right, take care.